Hi everyone. Welcome back to the Power Leader podcast. In today's episode, we step into a conversation that cuts through the noise of modern leadership, especially in cybersecurity, where transparency, psychological safety, and operational governance are not buzzwords. Rex Johnson joins us to unpack what transformation really requires inside an organization, drawing from decades of building roadmaps, governance models, and operating frameworks across military, healthcare, and enterprise environments. You will hear stories that reveal the signals leaders often miss, from the difference between performative governance and true operational maturity to why psychological safety is the most underestimated security control in the modern enterprise. Rex shares how commitment is built not through compliance but through belief, how culture becomes the strongest defense when people are trusted to learn, speak up, and take ownership. This conversation is a masterclass in real leadership, the kind that does not hide behind slide decks, inflated metrics, or governance theater, but the kind that builds resilient teams, elevates underrepresented voices, and changes the odds for people who were never given a fair chance. Let's get into it. Transparency is one of the important leadership asset, but many bosses does not understand the meaning of transparency. They just create slide decks and create artificial metric, create inflated scope because they want control, and that is not the real leadership means, especially in an industry like cybersecurity, right?
You're
So
right.
those behaviors, I think, often surface before the transformation even begins. And looking back to everything what you have done, you have built roadmaps, governance models, and operating frameworks for decades. What signals tell you an organization is ready for transformation, and what signals tell you it is not?
Well, I think one of the things that come to mind is we had the opportunity when I was in the reserves as battalion commander for an operation in Korea called
Mhm.
OCHA Freedom Guardian. This was 2014 at the time. It's one of the largest command post exercises in the world. It's one of the reasons North Korea doesn't like us too much sometimes. But I saw where my soldiers were, and my command sergeant major, she also saw where they were. And I basically saw that they were ready for a mission like this, and they worked very hard at it. And so I actually lobbied and went to Reserve Command and convinced them to give us the assignment, and they killed it. They stood up to everything. Many things happened. It's a demanding environment, very exhausting, and they did very well and
Mhm.
was praised by the active army. And this was a reserve unit. Now, very similar in the thing that you have to think about in the those things is I take a look at who the leadership is. I take a look at the people who are not just the title leaders, but the influential leaders and the people that are listened to. And
Mhm.
there's times that I've seen people who got promoted because they covered up mistakes, and that's a bad thing because we all make mistakes. Mistakes are how we learn, and if we
Yes.
can embrace those, then we can do better. But that mindset will separate organizations that are ready for transformation and those who are not.
That words itself shows that how a transformational leader looks like. Thank you for that. Too many organizations mistake a governance theater for governance maturity, like relying on policies, committees, slide decks, messaging instead of the systems and behaviors that actually create trust and resilience. I think shifting from performative governance to operational governance is the challenge nowadays if you look at the organization. So, how do you help leaders transition from this performative kind of governance to actual operational governance?
I think it comes down to does this governance model or this rule, does that produce change, or does it produce a checklist that you're trying to fill out?
Mhm.
I remember once I did a assessment for a health care system, and the CIO asked me to come in, and I gave him his score, and he threw it back at me and said, "I need you to come back with a different score." And I had the
Okay.
salesperson next to me about to have a panic attack, and I said, "I'm not changing this because this is where you are."
Yes.
And he says, "I have to go to my audit committee because if
Mhm.
I don't come with different scores," I said, "Well, sir, what you need to do is you need to get your team to that maturity, and we need to create a roadmap for you. And you
Sure.
need to tell your audit committee that you're not there yet, but here's your plan to get there. He didn't invite me back, but that was my suggestion. And
Mhm.
sometimes you have to do that.
Sure thing. That is integrity, right? Especially in an industry like healthcare, it is not right to do. And that touched the exact point you mentioned about the transparency and trust. And, we see again and again that security breaks down when teams operate in territorial way, like
Mhm.
priorities are not aligned and leaders assume everything is fine because no one is raising concerns. That is a false sense of security, and in my mind that is definitely dangerous. I think the differentiator is building a mature, accountable, cross functional security culture that actually works in practice. So, from your perspective, what is the most overlooked lever in building a mature, accountable, cross functional security culture?
It's psychological safety, Dia. And I'll tell you why. Because I've seen organizations where they say, hey, we used No before. And if someone fails 3 phishing attacks, we let them go. And I'm sitting there going, why?
Yeah.
I mean, aren't they going to learn from that mistake? I mean, why not
Mhm.
just coach them and get them training? Now, I see a lot less of that now. And one of the things I've been asked by some leaders is that how do we get more transparency? And I say, it's somewhat half kidding, if you get rid of the fear of litigation, you're going to see
Mhm.
a lot more transparency. But we're not going to do that entirely. I mean, people need to be accountable. But seriously, if you think about the fear of this kind of coming back to haunt you, you'll see a lot more transparency, a lot more honesty. And that's why the culture is your most powerful security control. And if
Sure.
it's one people are going to invest in when they believe. And I've seen people who've made mistakes and they've owned it. And I always tell them, what did you learn from this? I said, okay,
Mhm.
let's do better next time.
Sure. Yeah, totally understand that culture is one of the most important security controls, and many organization does not realize that even now in the era of AI. And the psychological safety, if you cannot talk about what is not working, then how are you going to fix it? And that is one of the way to create more incidents or internal threats, things like that. So I believe one of the most important responsibilities of any healthy organization is creating an environment where people can meet high standards without fear, confusion, or retaliation. Because speaking up sometimes, put them in a situation that they have to face retaliation. And sometimes, due to our laws and regulations, they might not even get to justice, and which is not good. So if you can't provide psychological safety, it doesn't matter how many slogans you put on a slide or how often you talk about culture. You are performing cultural mimicry, not building a real culture. So, what are your advice on building psychological safety?
I think the thing you got to do there is that you got to keep in mind that people don't resist change so much; they resist loss, and
Mhm.
you've got to help them understand what they're keeping. That's the key thing there. So I think it's important that you do that. And a lot of organizations have tried to have that open door policy, the hotline, or whatever it may be, and certainly be able to allow people and you know people that can listen and leaders that can understand where they're coming from. I think with that you're going to get people that are going to buy more into a culture, buy more
Mhm.
into the mission, and even if they're not going to stay with you, people don't stay at jobs forever. At
Sure.
least they're going to give you their best self, and they're going to have a great experience being there.
Sure thing. I think that balance about being able to listen and being able to speak up is what separates leaders who create mere complaints from those who inspire true commitment. We are in an era of AI, and emotional intelligence remains one of the most strategic leadership capabilities we have. But many bosses still default to complaints, which is really just obedience. And I believe great leaders don't build obedient followers, they build committed people who take ownership. Just like you mentioned, they might leave tomorrow, but when they are there, they take true ownership. And from your perspective, what is the difference between a leader who creates compliance and a leader who creates commitment?
Well, compliance is what you do when people are watched. Commitment is what you get when people believe. And I'll give you a story again. When I was a first lieutenant or a captain, this was the early 90s. Okay. So I was supposed to carry some classified documents on a 3.5-inch floppy disk. People want to go back and remember what those look like. But I was supposed to carry it to the headquarters, and the protocol, the rule was that you had to carry it in this folder that said classified and transport it. Well, I just do the folder. I toss the folder aside. I put the disk in my breast pocket, and then I showed up at headquarters and took it out. And some major got on me and said, "That's not the protocol, Lieutenant. You're supposed to have this in this file, and it's supposed to say classified." And a colonel came to my aid, and he says, "So the lieutenant putting it in his pocket without showing that he has a classified document, they're going to have to take the lieutenant down, get the disk out, find a computer in the early 90s that can read this program." He said, "Lieutenant Johnson found a safer way to do this. He understood the spirit of the mission more so than the process." And I really appreciated that colonel standing up for me. But it comes down to that, uh, sometimes you may find a better way to do it. And it's the
Mhm.
spirit of that. And that's the thing that's going to create that kind of commitment when people realize, I got a better way to do this, and it's actually safer. And that person is heard by their leadership.
Mhm. Yeah. Rex, I also remember you mentioning in our last conversation that you recently completed the AI strategy program at Berkeley, if I remember correctly. And, I truly appreciate how intentionally you invest in continuous learning. From your perspective, how is AI reshaping leadership itself? Not just the technology. We just mentioned about finding a better way to do things right. What do you think? How can we utilize AI to reshape the leadership itself, not just the technology?
Well, I think you got to think of AI as a tool. That's what it is. So back in the 80s, when I was in college, I was studying journalism, and we would have on our reporting class, we would have to write stories. Now, this is back before people really used word processors. They used typewriters. And if you had a misspelled word in your story, you got a zero. So
Okay.
at the time, you would have your dictionary, your thesaurus, you would have Skunk and White's elements of style there all around you as you're typing your story and checking it. But now we have spell check and autocorrect.
Mm-hmm.
So that now automatically does that for us. So we don't have that extra task of checking to make sure we spelled that word right. They're able to write better stories.
Mm-hmm.
You got to think of that. AI's like that on steroids. It's going to help us do things better when used right. And, one thing I also appreciated about the course, and Anthropic put out a really good course that you can take online for free called on AI Fluency. It talks about proper use of AI, has a clear understanding of 4 distinct things. The delegation, and that is what you're going to do and what the AI is going to do.
Mm-hmm.
The description, basically making sure the AI understands what the role is, the parameters, how they're supposed to do this, what the context is. Discernment, and that's where we need to apply the ethical standards that we want to do in using AI. And then the diligence is slightly related to discernment, but it's more about the transparency of, this AI used to create part of this content. That really helps frame it. And when people think of it from that level, leaders and people and everyone's going to take advantage of AI for the tool it is. And it's going to make things much better and easier.
Yeah, I remember discussing about the tools and new technologies with one of my professors at Carnegie Mellon, and how dramatically the cybersecurity landscape is shifting. I mean, not just the cybersecurity and their technology, right? And with that, how the expectation on leaders are rising with it.
Mhm.
Technical expertise alone is no longer enough. Actually, I never believed technical expertise alone is
No.
enough in certain positions like leadership positions. And the next generation will need a very different blend of judgment, adaptability, and emotional intelligence, right? I believe that is one of the important leadership assets to have. In your view, what will separate the next generation of cybersecurity leaders from the last?
Well, I think it's the ability to communicate risk as a business story, not a
Okay.
technical briefing. You kind of hit on that. I want to talk about a few people that I've had the privilege of working with, as far as the next generation of leaders. And I've had the opportunity to work with them for a while. There's a young man by the name of Rasul Kadivar in the early 2000s. He was a young immigrant out of Iran, very sharp guy. And I gave him some great projects that I gave him a chance to lead a couple projects. And I was surprised. I picked up a global CIO magazine and he mentioned me by name 20 years later as one
Okay.
of the influential men. And I contacted him. I said, dude, this is really nice of you to say. He goes, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
you looked at me and said, you're managing this project and you believed in me. And now he is a CEO. More recently, I hired a young woman, Madison Redford. She was 20 years old at the time, and I met her at a cyber boot camp. And I was just very impressed with how well she answered questions and really had that emotional intelligence. Now, she's been with me for about 4 years. She's now a senior consultant. She is asked for by name by
Okay.
clients, by how well she does. And she's also been the liaison between me and my MDR, XDR partner, Elementrix. And that sort of thing has really helped her. And I told her that she's going to surpass me in her career someday. And I believe she will. A third person I'd like to bring up is a lady by the name of Jana Gregg. Now, Jana worked with me at BKD. She did not report to me. She was a marketing person. But what I noticed about her is she had such a grace and presence about her. She'd take technical people that were very nervous for interviews, podcasts like this, and help put them at ease.
Okay.
And really helped. She was genuinely interested in cybersecurity. And I remember having those talks. We went on a few different events together. And when she left, she sent her leaving the firm notice, but she sent me a private message saying that she really enjoyed working with me and appreciated, how we had the great working relationship. Now, I will tell you, Jana is a 40 under 40. She's an Oxford Executive Program alumni, and she is the CEO of the Centerstone Foundation. Now, I'm
Very
also
nice.
told that she once played Belle in the Disney theme parks. I did ask her that. All she ever did was smile and say she would not confirm or deny it, but I could see it because she always made people feel seen, heard, and at ease. And she is a sister and an ally in every sense of the word. And I'm grateful to have her in my life. And all these people are people that I've had the ability to work with and impact. And I'm just privileged just to see how these people go from where they are and how they develop into these great roles.
As you know, you are one of my inspirations too. And part of the reasons we are sitting here today is because of how closely our values align, in how we think and how we lead and how we try to contribute to the industry and the people in it, So you have shaped standards, mentored leaders, and served on boards in ways that ripple far beyond your formal roles. When you look at the architecture of your own work, both the intentional choices and the unintended impact, what legacy do you believe you are building?
Well, intentionally, I want to be the person that changed the odds for the person that may not have had that chance before due to
Sure.
a glass ceiling, due to stereotypes or standards. And obviously, that's why I advocate for people that are underrepresented in this industry. Women are greatly underrepresented. They're only 22% right now.
Mm-hmm.
And neurodivergent people get marginalized, and they never, not I won't say never, but a lot of them have not had the chance, and they've been underemployed when they're very talented and brilliant people. And as a
Yeah.
person on autism spectrum disorder myself, uh, I I know how that can be a superpower. But if I had
Mm-hmm.
revealed that early in my career, even in the military, I would have had a very short one. Um, I want to let you know that there was somebody I hired, and he went on his first project, did not go well. And
Mm-hmm.
this client came and said, I want to talk to you about this person. They didn't do well. And I listened to what they had to say. I told the client, I said, you got some valid points here.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, Bob, have you ever had to coach and mentor one of your team members? He goes, oh, yeah, I've had to do that. I said, come on. Let's go back and let's maybe better explain this. And the person came back and did much better. And when I had the conversation with him, he was afraid that this was going to be his exit interview, that he was going to be let go. And I just said, "Did you understand what went wrong?" He told me yes. What did you learn? He told me what he learned. He answered honestly. He was very transparent. I said, "Okay, now you know how to do it right, because you're going to go back and do it right now." And he did. And he is one of my top performers to this day. So the other question you asked, I would say probably unintentionally, I might be building a reputation for the person who's saying me that no one else will say. And I made peace with that. So the legacy I'm choosing isn't titles, isn't revenue numbers. I mean, they're nice. But I told Madison, I said, if you, when you reach my age, mention me in a speech or a talk somewhere, that would be my reward. I mean, I was already just overwhelmed with Rasul saying that about me. And, when I'm gone and she mentions me, that will be everything.
Thank you so much, Rex, for bringing not just your expertise, but your humanity into this conversation. What you shared today reminds us that transformation is not born from frameworks or slide decks. It is born from leaders who choose truth over theater, courage over convenience, and people over protocol. In cybersecurity, in leadership, and in every mission that demands resilience, the real differentiator is not technology. It is the culture we build, the safety we protect, and the belief we inspire. You have shown us that commitment is created when leaders listen, when they invest, and when they make space for people to bring their full selves, even their mistakes, without fear. And as we step into an era shaped by AI, rapid change, and rising expectations, your message is clear. The next generation of leaders will not be defined by how well they comply, but by how deeply they understand the spirit of the mission and the people who carry it. As we close today's episode, I want to leave our audience with this. Leadership is not defined by titles, technical mastery, or perfectly crafted governance decks. It is defined by the courage to tell the truth, the humanity to learn, and the humanity to build cultures where people can speak, grow, and contribute without fear. Real transformation begins long before any roadmap or framework. It begins in the behaviors leaders model, the psychological safety they protect, and the integrity they refuse to compromise. In an era shaped by AI, rapid change, and rising expectations, the leaders who will define the future are those who anchor their decisions in ethics, transparency, emotional intelligence, and purpose. Thank you for joining us and for being part of a community that believes leadership is not performance, it is responsibility, it is impact, and it is legacy. And stay tuned. Our next episode with Rex will release soon. Expect leadership insights rooted in ethics, integrity, humanity, and purpose. This is the Power Leader Podcast. Signing off, Dia.